Hi everybody. So we're going to get started with our review of the character design. And this is really where things start getting really interesting, where you start putting the photographs together and bringing your character to life. So we have, let's see, it's week 3 now. We've got 4 and 5. So we have really, you could say 3.5 installments where we're going to be continuing to design the character. So this week, the main focus is going to be really just to make sure that you have, your photographs are good quality. They're going to work for your design. Also, I think the most important thing is that you have layer masks, which is what we learned in the previous exercise, um, and that will sort of take a look at the direction the design is going in it, and on a kind of a macro level, like a large view, just to see what we can do to adjust the design at this point, um, kind of a broad way. And then through the rest of the class, we'll just keep working on different elements of the design, working a little bit more with the character, refining the design, maybe adjusting colors, um, adding backgrounds, modifying the text. We're going to build it slowly. So at this point, this is your very first draft. So it's probably going to really go through a lot of changes naturally, organically throughout the rest of this class. So again, so what I'm going to focus on is just layer masks, making sure that your character is starting to look like a character and see what we can do to maybe adjust it that way. And those are the main things. Um, If you want to take a look at where we're headed with this design, I don't think I've mentioned this in the review yet, but if you go over to Milestone 4, Task 2, I have some finished designs that I've collected over the sessions you can take a look at. Again, that's like really finished ones, but just to kind of sort of see how your character might develop in terms of all the additional things that we're adding. Um, okay, so in addition to layer mass, I would say that the other thing, we always tend to cover a lot of information in the textbook exercises, and I would say at this point, layer masks and adjustment layers are the two probably the key things that we're going to continue working on, and so it's good to know those particular things, um, or really focus on learning those. Okay, let's get started. Okay, Ashley. All right, so I'm going to start with your talking about your design. I think your design is really developing nicely. It looks like a character in the sense that it's like feels like it's going to be able to move, and it has a structure that's very recognizable, this kind of humanoid structure, which isn't required. It's not required to have something that looks human with arms and legs, like a upright figure, but uh, it's good to have something that represents something that we would recognize as a creature that can move and um, do things in the world, for it to start reading as a character, which I think yours does really well. I think all your photographs, in terms of the choices you made with your original photographs, are working well with your character, and you already have some really cute kind of movement with your design. Okay, so that's the good part. The part that you need to work on, though, if we look over at your layer mask, it looks like what you have done is actually deleted the background, which is what you wanted to avoid having doing. You want to have the full photograph and it hiding with the layer mask. So what I want you to do is to go back. You're going to have to rebuild your character, but just use the design that you have here. This looks great. But rebuild it using the tutorial in the assignment. We have other tutorials as well, but this particular tutorial right here, let's see where it is right here, is going to get you started with the layer mask. So use that, rebuild your character so that you're going to have layer mask so you won't have deleted anything, and then make sure to add the name of the character as well. You're going to use the exact name from Milestone 1, whichever that one, Rockin' Rhapsody Roy, maybe. And that's what you want to revise. So the most important thing is to get your layer masks in this week, because we're going to be using them throughout the rest of the class, and it's absolutely really necessary that you have them. If you run into any problems with them, like that tutorial is a really nice basic tutorial. It's only 5 minutes long and it should really get you started. Do head over to our tutoring service using the red help button at the top. And it's at the very top of our classrooms. This red help button, you click in, and this is I'm just going to demonstrate here for anybody that's looking for a little help. Go to Thinking Storm. They have help with Photoshop, and they also work with a lot of students who are from this particular class, so they're familiar with what we're doing. And you can work one-on-one with a tutor, and it's free service. And we're one of the classes I think that is one of the more technical ones, and so I really think it's just worthwhile to take advantage of them. If you run into any problems with any of the steps within the software, something that's just not kind of working the way you think it should, or you just want a little bit more explanation for it. Okay, so that's what you want to work on here. Okay, Brendan. Okay, yeah, overall, I think this is definitely coming along here. Um, you've got layer masks, which is great. You've got your character starting to really, come to life with a cute little face and the kind of rolling around on the lollipop down there. Um, I would say, so yeah, you mentioned something about the French fries being a little bit difficult. And yeah, some objects are definitely harder than others. And it looks like what may have happened here is you may have actually erased a little bit of the background rather than masking it. Let me just hold on just a minute here. I'm just gonna put a background here just behind it. It just sometimes can make it easier to see. Um, the masking. So your masking looks good. So what I always look for is like edges, things around edges that are a little, you can't see when it's white on white. And yeah, so this one I would say it looks like the background, and that's okay actually because I am a little concerned about this image because it's branded with McDonald's, and you really want to make this your own brand, like your own character. And so one of the things you want to make sure is have your character name, which is I think either Flippin' Food Fran or Flippin' Food Fred, one of those. So you want to put that somewhere in there, just at the bottom or the top. In any text you like, just label your character design. But then I would replace this with something that doesn't have the branding. And that actually might also help you with the masking to work with a different image. Because again, some images just work better than others. And so I went on to my friend Google Images to see if there was anything that was going to could replace it with a simple package, and there's actually a lot. So I just did a search here for French fries in a package, and I did it larger than 1024 by 768, and that'll get us into a good range. And look, there's some really cute images here with French fries in them. This one is really simple. It's really nice. You can see there's a ton of them. And look for some, I think actually the French fries look better in some of these than the ones you have, which, the ones you have are okay, but they're a little flat. And we can see these are more three-dimensional and they'll look cuter. Like they'll look more real in your package. And, maybe some of the ones that are more kind of haphazard, like your design. So anyhow, that's what I'd recommend doing. Um, something you could do too later on, if you think about it, don't worry about it for this one, but maybe the title could actually go on to the package, the name of the character. Later, again, I would put it somewhere outside just for now to make it easy, but yeah, that could be something to think about. If you like the idea of having a little text on here, that would be a really nice place to put it. Okay, so that's, I think, the main thing here. Um, So something else the last thing I would maybe think about is how maybe you could make it, there's still a sense that it's not quite a moving, breathing character. Um, and that might just be over time, maybe it develops, like you add some movement to it. You could, let's see, here's layer 3. Things like when you tilt things, you can sort of like a person walking, sometimes tilting things can really start making a difference. Again, you don't necessarily have to do that right now, but That could really help. Maybe adding some arms to the character could help. So you could have some little arms coming out. That could really make it a little bit more character-like. So that would be just something to think about. Um, you want, when people see it, you want people to automatically recognize that it's a living creature that is animated. Okay, all right, well, I think you're going in a really good direction with your layer masks. Okay, Nick. All right, I just popped this gray background behind, again, just because when you have a lot of images with white backgrounds, it can be hard to see your selections, but just putting this behind there, I can see that you did a really nice job here. All your selections look very clean. There's no, extra little white bits showing. We may still continue to refine the layer masks later on. There's things can come up where you add a background, suddenly you need to make changes. But the thing is that when you work with the layer masks and you have the original image behind it, then it's really easy to fix anything. So this is always the really good way to go. So I think your layer masks look really good here. So nice job. That's, I think, the most important thing about this particular assignment, as I mentioned. Okay, I'm just going to go back here. So the one other thing you want to just have here is the name of your character. Just any simple text, you can just put it here. You may need a tiny bit more room at the bottom or the top later on, so you could kind of move things around a little bit. Just pop it in here. Again, whatever name you chose from the Milestone 1 list. I guess this is probably, is this Flippin' Food Fred? I think so. Okay, so you actually identified the thing that I was also thinking about with your characters, how all of these parts fit together. It's not quite reading yet as, it's still reading as a collection of objects rather than, down here, this is starting to definitely read as a character right down here. These elements, they're really beautifully done. And up here, I think it gets a little bit harder to tell. So you could keep experimenting. One thing is this hamburger, if you want to experiment with the hamburger, is maybe a flatter hamburger, one that you can't see so much inside. Because when you have so many different things in here, it becomes a collection of objects rather than a full unified thing, if that makes sense. All of the different colors and shapes and everything in there. So, so something you could try is just, I like the different ideas you have here, but how does that read as, maybe you can move the eyes down, but how does that read more as a character? Um, or, if you remove um, the the hamburger and then move this guy down, does that read more as a character? So you could kind of experiment with the things that you have, and see, I don't know, see how they, if you can, that's what I'd probably start with, just kind of experimenting with those. Or um, so that's starting to look a bit more like a head with some eyes. But maybe you have, of course, you'll have your own solution here. But those are the only things that I would really work on here, is just experiment with your character, which is totally a normal thing at this point to be working with, because the photographs that you get are often very different from what you imagined when you sketched the character. So it's a matter of trying to play with what you can find. Um, okay, so that's it. So your masks look really good. Keep experimenting with the character just a tiny bit more, and then add your name of your character. Okay, Whitney. All right, so let's see here. So in response to your question, your edge mask questions, which I think is really, those are great questions. And they go to the heart of how to be a good masker, is understanding the menu area. So I posted here, I actually have this covered in, if you go up to the top here, I've got some demos. I think I did this in Photoshop 6, so it looks probably, I think it looks pretty similar to yours. But if there are any tiny differences, that's why. But the process is the same. And I also have some photos that I have, the photos that I used in the demo, I have in the zip file here if you want to walk along with it. But I actually just posted here to your question two of the parts, part of the tutorials 2 and 3, which pertain to your questions. The background colors and the edge selection tool. I also have listed another link that I thought you might find useful. It's from the learning activities. If you go to learning activities, one of the video or yeah, I guess the videos is called, uh, it goes to lynda.com, and it's about layer masking, but there's also a really good module in there on refining selected edges, which sort of, kind of goes over your questions uh, in a slightly different way, but about the same thing. So I hope those help. Let me know if you have other questions. Okay, so in terms of, let's just go into your, let's see here. What is your file name? Character construction. Okay. Okay, all right. So just going to do what I did with the other folks. I'm just going to add a background color here. You can do this to yourself too. I find this, it's quite useful to have a background color you can sort of turn on and off, and so that you have it in the file as well. I'm actually doing exactly what the refined mask area does, which is I'm just changing the background. So yeah, so you can see all your selections look really quite clean. So what I'm looking for here is there's little bits of white that might be showing, but you don't have any, so I think that's good. And let's see here. It looks to me like you've got all your layer masks correctly done, in the sense that you still have your full image, which is what we want to have. We don't want to destroy any part of the image. We want to keep it all and just mask what we don't need. And that looks all really good. Um, and let's see what your questions, if you had any questions here. And you mentioned that you had some trouble don't worry so much at this point about changing the color. We're actually going to do a whole week on changing colors. So I'd actually recommend that you just leave the colors as is at this point, and use the methods, like the good methods that we're going to work on later on. Okay, so you might not like the colors that you have, but don't worry about that at this point. Um, and let's see here. So I would say, so looking at your design here, the things that I might change here, so first of all, the thing you definitely want to change is it should just be Terrible Toys Todd rather than From Terrible Toys Todd, because the name of the character is Terrible Toys Todd, so you want to indicate that. You could probably enlarge your character just a tiny bit. You definitely want to, you don't want to crowd it in the design, which is an opposite problem, but you definitely want to make sure that it's just really going to fill the space. So I might bring it down just a tiny bit, like enlarge your pieces. Alternately, if you don't want to enlarge it, you could actually just crop your background down a tiny bit, if that makes sense. Like kind of just take the crop tool and just resize your background just a tiny bit. Um, I would probably consider adding another arm here on the other side, so it looks like it's got two arms. And you can do it, let's see here, how does this work? Okay, so you could just flip, like duplicate one of these arms, or find another arm that looks similar and put it on the other side. And then I would sort of like, somehow the two hands here looks a little weird, having two hands. So I might consider somehow seeing if you can just have one hand, if that makes sense. One hand holding the sign. So figure out how you might do that. Maybe you need to have a different hand, or um, so that you can just make that a little cleaner. Those are the main things. I think everything else looks really good, and it's definitely looking like a character design. And um, let's see, this one right here. I see. So this so the only so in terms of your selections, so this selection looked a little, just maybe a little bit kind of cut straight, and I was, and that's why I clicked on it, is because that's why, it's because there's a lot of blurring in this image. If it's possible to find a different photograph that doesn't have so much blurring around the edges, I think that would look a lot better in terms of your selection. This is a really cute little kind of face, like it's so kind of grumpy, which I understand why you want to have this particular face. But if you can find maybe another version of this toy photograph that's more in focus, I think that would work a lot better. Or maybe just a kind of a grumpy face toy, to get that look you're going for. You have to, with this particular project, you do have to be flexible with the photographs that you choose and kind of work it in general to the Terrible Toys Todd idea. Um, if that makes sense, like just kind of keep the the view on Terrible Toys Todd, rather than maybe your own kind of specific toys that you're hoping to include. That I think will lead you in a really good direction in this assignment. But I like what you're doing with the kind of the grumpy quality, because I think that it's important to indicate in some way in this particular character the idea of him being a little terrible. Okay, hope that's helpful, and look forward to seeing your revision. Okay, Daniel, Garbage Dump Dan. Okay, I'm just gonna pop this behind character. Okay. Yeah, overall this looks good. Let me just yeah, there you go. I love the arms and the leg. Yeah, I think your design looks really cute. Um, just looking, I started focusing on the layer masks here. Um, and they look really, yeah, really nice. So the only layer part, can you see now this white line here showing? This happens, it actually happens in a way that Photoshop kind of does this. Um, and there's a lot, sometimes there's nothing you can do when you work on the selection uh, for that not to have happen, despite making all the selections right. And so the only way is really to manually, um, let's see, where is this? I think it's going to be around your, is this it? There we go. So this is where, so it's right here. And so what you do to get rid of that is you click directly on the layer mask. Can you see what so if you see, can you see that there's colors now? And when I click directly on the layer mask, it turns to black and white, which are the only allowable colors when you're in the layer mask. And that's because they don't actually work as colors. They work as, well, they sort of do, but they work on the mask. And so what we want to do is we want to take some black and we want to just mask this edge. So all we need to do is switch over here, get a paintbrush here. I'm going to make it really nice and big. I'm using the bracket tool because I just want to make this fast, and just uh, go over this. It looks like, do I have the opacity? I do. Yeah, so it's just, so I just, go over and just, get rid of that. Oh, I'm going to have to be a little careful going here. But see how I just, um, can clean that up. That's all I think you need to do here in your layer mask. Everything else looks really good. Let me just, so I'm going to just actually get rid of that white background, the black background. So lighting. Yeah, don't worry too much about lighting at this point. It was really good for you that you were observing that. We will have time to work with that. And oh, it looks like you actually did add a little bit of, yeah, good. Yeah, so you can continue to play with that. I think your lighting right now looks pretty good. And uh, light, so sometimes, so if you're, if the lighting is coming in different directions on your object, I you can, play with that and fix some of that. But I think that in some other ways, it's not the most important part of the character design. Like if it has different types of lighting, I think it can look okay that way. I think the most important thing is that each element has good lighting. Each of the elements themselves, in the sense of creating a nice form. Like this, this has a lot of form because of the shade and shadow. I think that's more important. Um, okay, so let's see what can we work on here. So I would say that just in terms of the canvas itself, I might just make the canvas a little bit narrower on the sides so that you have less space. You'll find that once we get into adding some background, I'm going to move this here even though that's probably not exactly the best place, but I just don't want to cut it off. So I might just crop just a little bit along these edges to kind of give it more focus. Just like something, I don't know, something like that, just so that it really takes center stage. And then last thing is you might experiment with just having like two symmetrical eyes. Uh, I think that it starts to look more like a character when you have symmetry, like the orange is the same. So maybe pick one of these elements. I'm not sure, they're both good elements. But whichever one you like the most, or experiment with both, and make them the same eyes. Um, People are asymmetrical, and so are, things in nature are asymmetrical. But just for whatever reason, when you build a character design, if you work with symmetry, it does start looking more um, like a living character. And I think that's it. Everything else looks really good. I think you're going in a really good direction here, and I think that it's coming along well. Okay, Darla. Yeah, the edges are always tricky. If there's any, I'm going to look at them and see how they look. If I can offer any suggestions, I will, um, for how to refine them. Uh, and yeah, the different versions are really, they have the same tools, just maybe in slightly different places. That's the only difference I found. I think the main tools should be about the same. And it makes, masking is one of the things, it's the best skill to um, to learn in Photoshop, definitely. Um, but it does take a little bit of work. And it's just about practice. And so the more you practice, the more comfortable you're going to feel in it. Um, let's see. Okay, so where's your file? Right here. I always say no because to updating text files because I may not have your particular text, and if it updates it, it'll change it into something else, not what you have. Okay, so let me just zoom in here a little bit. So I'm going to do what I did with the other folks and put just some kind of colored background behind there so we can see your masking. Oh, overall, I think your masking looks pretty good. So I'll show you a little trick here for smoothing out edges. Um, let's see, look at this guy here. Yeah, so let's see. This is a tricky one because the background is somewhat close in places to value in the background. There's enough of a the more contrast you have between the edges, the better. Maybe some of the details lost a little bit there around the edge. Um, this guy, okay, so this is maybe a little problematic in here. The tennis ball. Let's see what the background. Oops. Oh, hold on. There we go. So yeah, so this one is a little bit, um, the value of the background again is somewhat similar to the value of the tennis ball, which makes selecting hard. Um, so, okay, hold on just a second here. I'm just making sure. Okay. Okay, so let's just take a look at this particular edge and see how we can clean this up a little bit. So I'm not sure which version you're using. I'm using CC 2017, which I have to say I've been resistant to moving to CC because I really just was very comfortable with my previous version. But it is fairly, I mean, it is similar. In fact, you could say it's improved in terms of the refined mask. So let's just, I might have to move things around a little bit. Let's just go in here. I'm going to right click and go to select and mask. Again, I don't know if this is your version. If you have the previous version, let me know and I can, I think I still have that also on my computer. So you have, it looks like maybe you had it set up for onion skin view right in here, which is a good view because it's actually the newest version, the newest view in Photoshop, and it allows you to actually see the background in a transparent view so we can actually see, so I can see here the issues that you have compared to the way we really want to select it around the edge. So I'm just going to move, so we just want to make sure that we get all of this in here. So, okay, so let's just get this, zoom in maybe a little closer. So the tool that I'm going to start with is the Refine Edge Brush tool. And I'm going to see, so that typically we should be able to go over this and kind of clean up the edge. So I'm just, can you see I'm just kind of like rolling over it once, over once and see. Yeah, so that cleaned up the edge a little bit. It might have created a little bit of transparency here as well. Let's see. I don't know if that really matters, but so this what I'm doing right here does not make any difference on the final image. It's just for the viewing. So I always like to start with this tool here, the Refine Edge Brush tool around an edge to see if that can help. So that looks like it did. Let's just zoom back. But then we got a little bit of bleed through here. So you can, let's just see here what we can do. Again, I haven't worked too much in the new version, so I'm also kind of looking a little bit for some of the tools I'm familiar with. So you can see here that I've got some transparency happening. So I'm not sure. So I'm actually going to go back and in my history and just go back one. So that's where yours were. And let's go back and this is, I do tend to go back and forth with my layer masks like this. So don't be surprised if you have to do that to, get a good selection. So I'm going to now go instead to edge detection, which is the kind of the automatic way that Photoshop does it as opposed to this tool, and see it. And I'm just going to go to the right here and see if that helps a little more. Just changing the view here. Okay, well that's pretty good. So I'm looking down here to try to get that edge cleaned up. And oops, sometimes you go too far and then suddenly the background. So maybe that's a little bit better. What do you think? Okay, so I think that actually maybe that might be the good way to go here. And so that would be, yeah, that looks pretty good. So you just want to have, when you mask something, it's not necessarily about making it what we might call perfect. You make it so that it looks realistic and it blends in. So when we zoom out, does it look okay? And yeah, it looks pretty good. So I would do the same thing with this one here. Go to the tire body, go up to just where the area we did here, and go to select and mask. And I'm going to just kind of zoom in. I always find zooming in the way to go. And let's see here if we can. So you can sort of see where, let's find an area in here where the mask doesn't, it's actually looking pretty good around here. Maybe, oh, yeah. I thought I saw a place in here that was a little bit, let's go up there and see. Okay, well, overall, that looks pretty good. But if you wanted to, what you could do is go to the edge detection and do the same thing. Go with the slider and just see. It is actually, oh, it is bringing back quite a lot. I'm just looking in here. So this might be, yeah, so that looks quite a lot better. Okay, so that's what I probably would do. So but I think again, I don't think you have very much work to do here with that in terms of cleaning up the edges. I think overall your edges look pretty good. Um, okay, so I'm just going to actually go back into history here and get rid of this white background. So what I would probably work on, in addition to just cleaning up the edges just a tiny bit, is the character itself. I think that's probably where you need to spend just a little bit more time trying to make it look like the character is alive. So I would probably recommend thinking about the tire as maybe your body, like kind of keeping that your torso, and maybe making a separate head to go on top so that your like ears maybe would go up higher. Like think about maybe a little plate or something, like something round could be your head. I think when you do that, it's gonna start to come to life a little bit more, because right now, again, it feels more like a collection of objects. Maybe you can't use all your objects, or maybe you can. Like I almost kind of want to get these as arms. Would that be holding down the shift key, resizing? Maybe that would be, I think you've got a lot of cool objects. So you might want to play with that. Maybe you don't need any legs because it seems like maybe it's going to roll. But I would experiment a little bit more. And I kind of feel like maybe you don't want to have, and I kind of feel like you don't want to have things on top of your tire, because I think your tire works well as its own thing. It's like a really beautiful image. It's very detailed. It has a lot going on. So I would sort of, maybe there's another way of working with this. I was just selecting like making a head on top with arms, but as a way of kind of problem solving, um, what's going on. But again, there's other ways to problem solve it. But I think the main thing is you want to really think about, again, making it into something that's going to really read strongly as a character. Um, so that's what I'd work on. And again, you've got a lot of cool different objects in here with which to work with. Um, so let me know if you have any questions, but I think your masking is going in a good direction, which was really important. You've got the text in, which I actually think is already a nice text that's got a nice heavy feel for your character. And it's just a matter of playing with your character a little bit more.